The rain slashed against my face as I clutched our son to my chest, his tiny body shivering despite the blankets I'd wrapped around him. "Derek, please," I screamed, but my voice was lost in the howling wind as I watched my husband's silhouette disappear into the night, running toward the warm glow of his ex-girlfriend's house across the street. I stood there, drenched to the bone, my 3-month-old baby wailing against me, abandoned in the worst storm our town had seen in decades. Lightning cracked above us, illuminating the betrayal that would become the last memory of my first life. My legs gave out as I crumpled onto the driveway, trying desperately to shield my son from the freezing rain. The water soaked through his blankets within seconds. His cries grew weaker as the temperature dropped. I crawled towards our locked car, my fingers bloody from pounding on the windows, begging for shelter that wouldn't come. "He's coming back," I whispered to my baby, already knowing it was a lie. "Daddy's just getting help." But Derek wasn't getting help. He was getting warm in Vanessa's arms while we froze to death on the pavement. I'm Camilla, and this isn't just a story of abandonment. It's a promise of justice served cold. They found us the next morning, huddled against the porch steps, my body frozen as I tried to shield my baby from the elements. They said I died of hypothermia, but I know I died of a broken heart. What they didn't know was that death wasn't the end for me. I gasped awake in my college dorm room, 5 years before that fateful night. My roommate Lauren was snoring softly across the room, just like she used to. My political science textbook lay open on my desk, preparing for the exam I remembered acing. And most importantly, I was alive, years before I ever met Derek. My hands trembled as I checked my phone. September the 15th, 2018. 5 years, 3 months, and 16 days before I would die in that storm. Before Derek would choose his ex over his family. I stumbled to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My face was younger, unmarked by the exhaustion of motherhood and a failing marriage. No dark circles, no worry lines. But my eyes had seen death. They had watched my husband abandon me and our child to die. That night, I didn't sleep. I plotted. In my first life, I met Derek at the campus coffee shop in exactly 2 weeks. He'd spill his latte on my favourite white blouse, apologise profusely, and charm me with those green eyes that crinkled when he smiled. I'd fall for his vulnerability when he confessed his recent breakup had left him shattered. I'd believe I could fix him. Not this time. For the next 2 weeks, I avoided that coffee shop like the plague. Instead, I researched. In this digital age, finding people was easy. It took me 3 hours to locate her. Vanessa Mitchell, Derek's ex-girlfriend, the woman he'd run to in the storm, the woman he'd chosen over us. Her Instagram was public, a mistake that would serve me well. I studied her like a scientist examines a specimen. Her favourite coffee shop, not the campus one, but an artsy place downtown. Her workout schedule, hot yoga Tuesdays and Thursdays. Her friend group, tight-knit but welcoming to newcomers. Most importantly, I learned that she and Derek were still together now. Though, according to my previous timeline, they would break up in approximately 3 months. I needed to understand what had really happened between them, the truth Derek never told me. So, I did something the old Camilla would never have dreamed of. I engineered a chance meeting. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, purposely bumping into Vanessa outside her yoga studio, spilling my smoothie on her mat. "Let me buy you a new one." She waved me off, but I insisted, and within 20 minutes we were sitting across from each other at a cafe, her telling me about her graphic design major, me pretending I hadn't memorized this information days ago. "My boyfriend's meeting me here soon," she mentioned casually. "He's always late, though." My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd planned to leave before Derek arrived, but part of me, the vengeful part that remembered dying in his betrayal, wanted to see him, wanted him to see me and feel something, a premonition, a warning. When he walked through the door, I nearly vomited. There he was, younger, carefree, his hair longer than when I'd married him. He hadn't yet developed the nervous tic of checking his phone every few minutes for gambling results. He hadn't yet learned to lie so smoothly that even I believed him. "Derek, this is Camilla," Vanessa said. "She sacrificed her smoothie to destroy my yoga mat." He laughed, that same laugh that would one day convince me to say, "I do." Those green eyes crinkled at the corners, and for a second I remembered how it felt to love him. Then I remembered how it felt to die because of him. "Nice to meet you," I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. I extended my hand, and when his fingers touched mine, I felt nothing. No spark, no destiny, just the cold determination of revenge. I left quickly after that, making excuses about study group. As I walked away, I heard Vanessa say, "She seems nice." If she only knew. Over the next 2 months, I carefully cultivated my friendship with Vanessa. I became her study buddy, her coffee date, her confidant. I listened as she complained about Derek's increasingly distant behaviour, nodding sympathetically while thinking, I know exactly what's happening. He's starting to gamble again. He's lying about where he goes at night. He's setting the stage for your breakup. In my first life, I never knew the extent of Derek's gambling addiction until it was too late, until we'd already lost our apartment, maxed out our credit cards, and were driving through that storm to his parents' house because we had nowhere else to go. But Vanessa knew. She'd seen the early signs, tried to help him, eventually gave up and broke things off when he stole money from her roommate. Now I watched history repeat itself, armed with knowledge he couldn't imagine I possessed. I found betting slips in his jacket, Vanessa confided in me one night, her eyes red from crying. When I confronted him, he promised it was just a one-time thing with his buddies. But I've heard that before. I handed her another tissue. Have you talked to him about getting help? She laughed bitterly. Derek doesn't think he needs help. He thinks he needs one big win to solve all his problems. I nodded, remembering how he'd said those exact words to me years later, after emptying our son's college fund on a sure thing. What are you going to do? I asked, already knowing the answer. I don't know, she whispered, but we both did. 3 weeks later, it happened exactly as I remembered. Vanessa discovered Derek had taken her credit card, racked up thousands in cash advances for gambling, and when confronted, he'd stormed out. In my previous life, this was when I met him, vulnerable, claiming his ex was crazy and controlling. This was when I became his saviour, his fresh start. Not this time. When Vanessa called me sobbing, I rushed to her apartment with ice cream and wine. I held her while she cried, fueling her anger, subtly ensuring there would be no reconciliation. You deserve better, I told her, the words bitter on my tongue. Because she did deserve better. We both did. He's been texting me non-stop, she sniffled, showing me her phone. Says he made a mistake, begging for another chance. I took her phone and read his desperate pleas, messages identical to ones he would send me years later, after different betrayals. My fingers itched to respond, to begin my true revenge, but patience was key. Block him, I advised. Clean break. She did. That night, I lay in my dorm room staring at the ceiling, knowing that across campus, Derek was drowning his sorrows, looking for his next saviour. In my previous life, he would find me tomorrow at that coffee shop. But in this life, I would find him first. Not as his victim, not as his saviour, but as his reckoning. I pulled out my notebook and flipped to my meticulously detailed timeline. Every significant moment in our relationship was mapped out, every lie exposed, every betrayal anticipated. I ran my finger down to the next entry. October 12th, the day he would lose $5,000 on a football game and desperately need someone to confide in. I knew exactly where he would go to drown his sorrows. I knew what he would drink. I knew what he would wear. I knew everything about the man who didn't yet know me. Tomorrow, I would begin the next phase of my plan. Not to win his heart this time, but to destroy it, piece by piece, just as he had destroyed mine when he left me and our son to die in that storm. Because in this second chance at life, I wasn't just surviving. I was hunting. October 12th, Volth arrived with a bitter autumn chill, fitting for what I had planned. I slipped into the campus bar where I knew Derek would be drowning his gambling losses, wearing a deep green sweater that matched his eyes. Not a coincidence. In my first life, he'd told me green was his weakness. I positioned myself 3 seats away at the bar, nursing a whiskey sour, pretending to study while secretly watching him in the mirror behind the bottles. He was already drunk, shoulders hunched over his 4th beer, phone clutched in his hand as he refreshed the betting app compulsively. The moment his head dropped into his hands, the exact moment I knew he'd just lost everything on that Patriots game, I made my move. "Rough night?" I asked, sliding onto the stool next to him, close but not too close. Concerned, but not over-eager. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. "You could say that." "Let me guess," I said, taking a calculated risk. "Patriots fan?" His eyes widened slightly. "How do you know?" I shrugged. "The way you keep checking your phone. That game was brutal." "Cost me more than you know," he muttered. I flagged down the bartender. "Another for him, please." Then, turning back to Derek. "I'm Camilla." "Derek," he replied, studying me with new interest. Not recognition. He'd never seen me before in this timeline. But intrigue. "Do I know you from somewhere?" I smiled. "I don't think so. I would have remembered." The irony burned my throat more than the whiskey. He wouldn't remember me, but I remembered every moment of our future together, every lie, every broken promise, and that final, fatal abandonment. "You're not friends with Vanessa Mitchell, are you?" His question was cautious, testing. The perfect opening. "Vanessa? Yeah, actually, why?" His face darkened. "Forget it. I should go." I placed my hand on his arm, the first time I'd touched him in this life. "Hey, wait, let me guess. You're the ex she's been upset about." He hesitated, then nodded. "Look," I said, pulling back my hand, "I don't take sides in breakups. Whatever happened between you two is your business." The relief on his face was palpable. "Most of her friends have been sending me death threats." I laughed softly. "I'm not most people." That night, I let him talk. I let him spin his web of half-truths about how Vanessa overreacted to his hobby, how she didn't understand his financial strategy. I nodded in all the right places, offered gentle sympathy, all while remembering how these same excuses would one day leave me and our child homeless. But unlike my first life, I wasn't falling for his charm. Every smile I gave him was calculated. Every laugh was a move in my chess game. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, I hesitated just long enough to make him think I was considering whether it was appropriate, given my friendship with Vanessa. "I don't know, Derek," I said, biting my lip. "It feels a little disloyal." "Just as friends," he insisted, eyes pleading. "I could use one right now." I slowly typed my number into his phone, making him promise not to tell Vanessa. Creating a secret between us, creating trust he didn't deserve. As I walked home that night, I felt dirty, like I needed to scrub his presence off my skin. But underneath that discomfort was a cold satisfaction. Phase 2 was in motion. Over the next few weeks, I carefully cultivated a friendship with Derek while maintaining my relationship with Vanessa. It was exhausting, keeping track of what each of them knew, ensuring they never discovered I was playing both sides. But I'd had years to prepare for this performance. With Vanessa, I was the supportive friend helping her move on. You're better off without him, I assured her, even as I checked the text from Derek lighting up my phone. Men like that don't change. With Derek, I was the understanding friend who saw the real him. I listened to his problems, offered advice I knew he wouldn't take, became his confidant. I was setting the stage for what came next. I borrowed money from the wrong people, he confessed one night after we'd been friends for about a month. We were sitting in his apartment, pizza boxes between us, his admission slipping out after his third beer. That's what really happened with Vanessa. She found out I took her card because these guys were threatening me and... I widened my eyes in practiced concern. Derek, that's serious. Have you thought about going to the police? He laughed bitterly. With what evidence? Besides, these aren't the kind of guys you report. I leaned forward, touching his hand gently. How much do you owe? $8,000, he admitted, not meeting my eyes. It might as well be 8 million right now. This was the moment. In my first life, this confession had come 6 months into our relationship. I'd emptied my savings account. $7,500 I'd been setting aside for grad school to bail him out. It was the first of many financial rescues, the beginning of my role as his saviour. This time, I had a different plan. I might be able to help, I said slowly. Not with all of it, but I have some savings. The hope that flashed across his face was pathetic and predictable. Camilla, I couldn't... Let me think about it, I interrupted. It's a big decision. For the next week, I let him believe I was considering bailing him out. I asked questions about repayment, about his plan to stop gambling, about whether this would truly solve the problem. I made him work for it, made him believe I was his last hope, all while I executed the real plan. It took 3 days to find them, the wrong people Derek had borrowed from, a local bookie named Mark and his associate Tony, who operated out of a vape shop downtown. I went there with cash in hand and a story. I'm Derek Foster's girlfriend, I lied smoothly. I understand he owes you money. Mark eyed me suspiciously. We don't discuss client business. I placed $500 on the counter. This isn't to pay his debt. This is for information. 20 minutes and 1 non-disclosure agreement later, I had what I needed. Proof of Derek's gambling, the detailed records of his bets, his losses, the threatening texts they'd sent him, even a recording of a call where he'd begged for more time. All copies, all legal, part of their business records, that, with the right incentive, they were willing to share. What I did next would have shocked the Camilla from my first life. I took this evidence directly to Vanessa. I need to show you something, I said, sitting her down in her apartment. And you're going to hate me for a minute. I confessed everything. My friendship with Derek, how he'd opened up to me about his gambling debts. I showed her the evidence I gathered. I watched her face cycle through betrayal, anger, and finally gratitude. Why are you showing me this? She asked, hands trembling as she looked through the texts. Because he's trying to drag someone else into his mess, I explained. Me. And I thought about keeping it to myself, handling it alone. But then I realised that's how he operates. He isolates his victims. Her eyes filled with tears. You're not going to give him money, are you? I shook my head. No, but I have a better idea, if you're willing to help. The plan we hatched was simple but devastating. Vanessa agreed to meet with Derek one last time. Closure, she'd tell him. I knew he'd agree. In my first life, he'd confessed he'd always regretted how things ended with her. I would accidentally discover them together. I would act betrayed, expose that I'd been considering helping him financially. Both of us would walk away, leaving him with nothing. No money, no support system, and most importantly, no safety net for when his dangerous creditors came calling. The night of the planned confrontation, I paced my dorm room, checking my phone obsessively. Vanessa and Derek were meeting at a campus cafe at 8 o'clock. I was scheduled to arrive, seemingly by coincidence, at 8:15. At 7:58, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "He's here, wearing the blue sweater like you said he would be." I took a deep breath. Everything was proceeding exactly as I'd planned, just like it had in my original timeline. Except, this time, I was the puppet master. At 8:12, I walked into the cafe, spotted them immediately at a corner table. Derek's back was to me, but I could see Vanessa's face, composed and solemn as she followed our script. I approached slowly, rehearsing my lines of shocked betrayal in my head. 3 steps away, I heard Derek's voice clearly. "I've missed you so much, V. These past weeks without you have been hell." 2 steps away, Vanessa's eyes flicked to mine, giving me the signal. 1 step away, Derek continued, unaware of my presence. "This girl I've been hanging out with, Camilla, she's nice, but she's nothing like you. I think she's going to loan me some money, though. Then maybe you and I could..." "Could what, Derek?" I interrupted, my voice ice cold. He whirled around, face draining of colour. "Camilla, what are you... This isn't..." "Save it!" I snapped. I heard enough. The scene that followed was theatrical perfection. My accusations, his desperate denials, Vanessa's calculated tears. By the time we walked out together, leaving him alone at the table, Derek Foster was a broken man. Outside the cafe, Vanessa hugged me tightly. "That was incredible," she whispered. "Did you see his face?" I nodded, but felt strangely hollow. This small victory was just the beginning. Derek would recover from this humiliation. In my first life, he'd bounce back from worse, finding new victims, new sources of money, new women to charm and exploit, including me. As I walked back to my dorm that night, I pulled out my timeline notebook. Phase 2 was complete. Prevent Derek from using me financially, sever his hopes of reconciliation with Vanessa. I turned to the next page where I'd outlined Phase 3 in meticulous detail. In my first life, after Vanessa, after me, Derek had dated 6 other women before proposing to me 3 years later. Each relationship followed the same pattern: charm, dependence, exploitation, abandonment. My finger traced down to the next name on my list: Rachel Chen. According to my timeline, Derek would meet her at a party next weekend. She would date him for 4 months before discovering he'd stolen her identity to take out loans. In my first life, I never knew about Rachel until after we were married, when she contacted me to warn me about the man I'd already legally bound myself to. This time would be different. This time, Rachel would never fall for him. This time, none of them would. I pulled out my phone and texted Vanessa, "Phase 2 complete, ready for Phase 3. Her response came seconds later. "Absolutely. The bastard deserves everything that's coming to him." If Derek thought today was bad, he had no idea what awaited him. Because I wasn't just preventing our tragic future. I was systematically dismantling every opportunity for happiness he might find instead. In this new timeline, Derek Foster would experience what I had felt that night in the storm. Complete and utter abandonment, with nowhere left to turn. And I was just getting started. Phase 3 unfolded like a masterpiece over the next year. Rachel Chen never fell for Derek's charm, not after I accidentally spilled my drink on her at the party where they were supposed to meet, striking up a conversation that inevitably led to warnings about the campus gambling addict who'd tried to scam multiple women. Rachel spread the word through her sorority. Suddenly, Derek found himself with a reputation that preceded him. Doors that should have been opened slammed in his face. Women who might have fallen for his act were now immune to his green-eyed gaze. But I wasn't satisfied with merely blocking his romantic prospects. I wanted complete devastation. My friendship with Vanessa had evolved into a partnership in vengeance. She'd introduced me to her cousin, who worked at the campus financial aid office. 3 casual conversations later, I learned that Derek's scholarship was contingent on maintaining a clean disciplinary record. It would be a shame if someone reported his gambling activities to the ethics committee, I mused to Vanessa over coffee. Her smile was wicked. It certainly would. The anonymous tip came from an untraceable email account. The evidence, delivered in a plain manila envelope to the dean's office, was comprehensive. By midterm break, Derek's scholarship was revoked. His academic career, once promising, now lay in ruins alongside his social life. I watched from a distance as he packed his car, forced to drop out when he couldn't afford tuition. In my first life, he'd graduated with honours, leveraging his business degree to secure the job where we'd eventually meet. That future was now impossible. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty. This wasn't enough. Derek had left me and our infant son to die. A ruined college career seemed trivial in comparison. I followed his digital footprints as he moved back to his hometown, got a job at his father's construction company, started rebuilding his life. Even without his degree, Derek was resourceful. In my original timeline, this resilience had been one of the qualities I'd admired. Now, it infuriated me. 2 years passed. I graduated with my political science degree, just as I had in my first life, but this time without the distraction of Derek. I took the law school offer I'd declined before, when Derek had convinced me to follow him to Chicago instead. All the while, I maintained distant surveillance on Derek's life. Social media made it easy. He'd started dating again, a woman named Kimberly who worked at the bank where his father's company held their accounts. In my timeline, I'd never known about her, but my research revealed she'd been his longest relationship before me. 6 months into their relationship, I made my next move. Securing an interview at Kimberly's bank wasn't difficult with my credentials. Getting assigned to her department took some manoeuvring, but nothing impossible. Becoming her friend was the easiest part of all. Kimberly was naturally trusting, always looking to welcome newcomers. My boyfriend's picking me up for lunch, she mentioned one Tuesday, 3 weeks after I'd started working there. You should join us sometime. I'd like that, I said, smiling as I organised the loan applications on my desk. What's his name? Derek. He works for his dad's construction company. Such a sweetheart. I bit back a laugh. Sounds nice. When Derek walked into the bank lobby that day, I made sure to be at the counter directly in his line of sight. The moment his eyes landed on me, I saw the flash of recognition, quickly replaced by confusion, then panic. I waved cheerfully. Derek Foster! It's been what, 2 years? How are you? Kimberly looked between us, surprised. You two know each other? College, I said vaguely, watching Derek's Adam's apple bob as he swallowed nervously. Small world, he managed, clearly desperate to escape. The smallest, I agreed. We should all get lunch sometime. I have so many stories I could tell you, Kimberly. The threat hung in the air, unmistakable to Derek, completely innocent to Kimberly. That would be great, she exclaimed. Derek's hand tightened around hers. Actually, we should go. Reservation? As they left, I saw him glance back. Fear evident in those green eyes I'd once loved. Good. He should be afraid. The lunch never happened. Derek made sure of that. But the seed was planted. Over the next few weeks, I became Kimberly's work confidant. I listened to her gush about Derek, nodding appropriately while collecting ammunition. I learned about his father's company's financial difficulties, about the loan application they'd submitted, the one currently sitting in my processing queue. It would be so easy to ensure that loan was denied. One missing document, one flagged concern about repayment ability. But that would be too quick, too merciful. I wanted Derek to suffer as I had, slowly, painfully, watching everything he loved slip away. Instead, I took a different approach. You ever run background checks on your boyfriends? I asked Kimberly during happy hour, 3 vodka sodas into the evening. She laughed. What, like hire a private investigator? I shrugged. More like Google deep diving, social media archaeology. Derek's pretty private, she said. Barely even uses Facebook. That's sometimes a red flag, I noted casually. People who hide their past. I saw the seed of doubt plant itself in her mind, watched it grow over the coming weeks as she began asking questions about Derek's college years, his previous relationships, watched him squirm as his carefully constructed new life began to unravel. 3 months later, Kimberly ended things. I consoled her through the breakup, secretly exulting in another successful sabotage. By this point, 4 years had passed since my rebirth. I was in my 2nd year of law school, excelling in ways I never had in my original timeline. Without Derek's influence, I'd blossomed professionally. But personally, I remained frozen, consumed by my mission of revenge. The calendar on my wall had a date circled in red, May 15th, 2023, the day I was supposed to meet Derek at a legal conference in Chicago, where he'd be representing his father's company in my original timeline. The day that would lead to our whirlwind romance, our ill-fated marriage, the birth of our son, and ultimately our deaths in that storm. As the date approached, I felt increasingly hollow. I'd systematically destroyed every path that might lead Derek back to me, ensuring our son would never be born. I'd accomplished my mission. Derek was alone, his reputation in tatters, his career stunted, his romantic prospects poisoned. Yet the closer May 15th came, the more I dreamed of my son. His tiny fingers, his scent, his eyes, green like his father's, but innocent, pure. In saving myself from Derek, I'd erased my child from existence. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. What had I done? On May 14th, I found myself driving to Derek's hometown, no clear plan in mind, just a desperate need to see him, to confirm that my years of vengeance had been justified. I parked outside the construction company where he worked, watching as employees filtered out at day's end. When Derek emerged, I barely recognised him. Gone was the confident swagger, the charming smile. Derek walked with slumped shoulders, eyes downcast, a man beaten down by a string of inexplicable failures. I followed him to a small apartment complex on the edge of town, watched him trudge up 3 flights of stairs, saw the lights come on in a window, revealing sparse furnishings, a life lived in temporary suspension. This was my victory. This broken man was what I'd created. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sick. That night, in a motel room 6 blocks from Derek's apartment, I pulled out my timeline notebook. The meticulous plans, the detailed strategies, they now seemed like the ravings of a madwoman. I'd been so focused on punishing Derek that I'd lost sight of what truly mattered, the life I could have built for myself, the opportunities this second chance had given me. The next morning, I made a decision. I would see Derek one last time, face to face, not to twist the knife further, but to find closure, to finally put the past behind me. I waited outside his apartment, heart hammering as he emerged for work. When he saw me leaning against his car, his face went pale. "Camilla," he said, voice barely audible, "why are you here?" I took a deep breath. "I wanted to see you." "To ruin what's left of my life?" he asked bitterly. "Haven't you done enough?" My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" His laugh was hollow. "You think I didn't figure it out. Every time things start looking up for me, you appear. Kimberly, the loan for my dad's business, even that job interview in Springfield last month, suddenly cancelled after I mentioned knowing you." I stared at him, genuinely shocked. "The job in Springfield? That wasn't me." "Right," he scoffed. It's all just coincidence. Derek, Save it, he interrupted. Whatever I did to you in college, I'm sorry. But this, following me for years, systematically destroying every chance I get to rebuild, it's sick, Camilla. I stood speechless, realizing with dawning horror that I'd become the villain in his story. That somewhere along the way, my righteous vengeance had twisted into something darker, something unrecognizable. I didn't follow you to Springfield, I said quietly. I've been in law school. He studied my face, uncertainty replacing anger. Then, who? The answer hit us simultaneously. Vanessa, we said in unison. I remembered then how enthusiastically she'd embraced our revenge partnership, how she'd continued asking about Derek long after I'd moved on to law school, how she'd insisted on keeping tabs on him just in case. She never stopped, Derek said, running a hand through his hair. God, what did I do to you both to deserve this? The question struck me like a thunderbolt. In this timeline, what had he actually done? Gambled away money, lied to Vanessa, attempted to use me as a financial safety net. Bad behaviour, certainly, but nothing approaching the magnitude of leaving his wife and child to die in a storm. That Derek, the one who had abandoned us, didn't exist yet. Might never exist. I'd been punishing him for a crime he hadn't committed, would never commit now that I'd altered our paths so dramatically. You don't deserve this, I whispered, the admission painful but necessary. Not all of it. His eyes narrowed in confusion. What's that supposed to mean? I almost told him everything then, about our future, our marriage, our son, that fatal night. But the words died in my throat. He would think I was insane, or worse, he'd believe me, and I'd have to face the full weight of what I'd done, erasing our child from existence out of vengeance. It means I'm done, I said finally. Whatever happened between us, it's over. I won't be part of this anymore. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. Why now? After all this time, why stop? I looked back at him. This man I'd once loved enough to marry, once hated enough to destroy. Because we both deserve a chance to be better than we were. As I walked away, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Is it done? Did you deliver the final blow? I stared at the message, realizing how deep her obsession ran, how I'd not only enabled it, but encouraged it. In trying to prevent Derek from becoming a monster, I'd created one in Vanessa, perhaps in myself as well. I deleted the message without responding, deleted her contact information, deleted the last traces of my revenge mission. 3 years later, I stood in the rain again. Not a deadly storm like before, but a gentle spring shower. My law degree was freshly framed in my office at the Public Defender's Service, where I'd chosen to build my career defending the vulnerable, those deserving of second chances. I'd heard Derek had finally escaped his hometown, started fresh in Seattle. Good for him. I hoped he'd found peace, just as I was trying to. My phone rang, a client calling with an emergency. As I answered, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating a figure hurrying across the street toward a house with warm, glowing windows. For a moment, déjà vu clutched at my heart. Then I relaxed. That other life, the one where I died in the cold with my baby, was gone. The woman I'd become since my rebirth was stronger, wiser, and ultimately more forgiving than the one who'd plotted endless revenge. I'd set out to make sure Derek lost us forever. In the process, I'd nearly lost myself. I turned away from the storm, walking toward my own warm apartment. The calendar on my wall had a new date circled, June 17th, 2026, my appointment at the adoption agency. My chance to be a mother again, this time on my own terms. Some might call it ironic that in saving myself from Derek, I'd erased my son from existence. But as I prepared to welcome a different child into my life, one who needed a home, needed love, I understood something profound. My rebirth hadn't been about revenge at all. It had been about breaking cycles of pain, about creating new possibilities where before there had only been tragedy. As I unlocked my door, I glanced back at the storm one last time. Somewhere, in some other reality, perhaps Camilla and her baby still died on that porch, abandoned by a man too selfish to save them. But in this reality, the one I'd fought for, suffered for, and finally found peace in, we survived. Not as victims, not as avengers, simply as ourselves, finally free. My phone buzzed with another text. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then curiosity got the better of me. I opened the message. Camilla, it's Derek. I know it's been years, but I need to talk to you. Something impossible has happened. I've been having these dreams, memories of another life, of us, of a storm. Please call me. I think you're the only one who might understand. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, as the lightning flashed again outside my window. Some stories, it seems, refuse to end. Some fates cannot be outrun. And some connections, even those forged in death, transcend time itself. My thumb hovered over the delete button for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, I began to type my response.